I'm Shaina Pomerantz. I'm the executive director for Race Talks. I'm going to be your panel moderator.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I run a program here started by my mama, Mama Donna. And so one of the things we do is we teach people how to have the uncomfortable conversation about race and racism.
Oh,
and we have a IQ quiz on our website to see how comfortable people are already with talking about race and racism, how knowledgeable they are. So I've asked everyone if they would be okay taking this IQ quiz.
It is what it is. Just give you a heads up. I might fail, but I'm with it.
No failure. No failure. Oh yeah, keep track of your yeses. So it's 8 questions. So keep track of your yeses. Okay, are y'all ready?
We're ready.
All right, so just to clarify, there will be some acronyms. It's intentional. So if you're like, ooh, what does that mean? Then it's probably a no.
Like the BIPOC?
Yeah. Exactly.
I used to
What does that mean?
So.
That's a no for you. But you're going to keep track of it.
Yes.
Look it up later.
Yes, I am.
So we can talk about it afterwards.
I am BIPOC or BIPOC.
I used to cut class, so I'm about to take this down.
All right, y'all ready? Question number 1. Are you a BIPOC? Yes or no?
I don't even know what that is.
I'm going to
Okay.
plead the fifth.
Remember, keeping track of your yeses.
Yes.
Question 2. Do you actively live or socialize with BIPOC communities?
I think that means white and black.
Yes.
Question 3.
Yes.
Have you experienced being the only person of your ethnicity in the room on a dozen or more occasions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Sure. Have you experienced being the only person of your ethnicity in the room on a dozen or more occasions?
Yes.
So keep track of your yeses.
Yeah.
I'm trying to turn this up for
Question 4. Have you read more than 10 African American authors?
No. Yes.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Like last year, I'm proud of me.
I'm proud of you too.
Facts.
Over the decade of my life, yes.
Only 30 years old.
By the way.
Yo, stay in school, don't cut class. You gotta go. Right. That's what I did, cut class.
So question 5. Have you read more than 10 authors from the African diaspora?
Ooh. No.
10? No.
Nah.
Yeah, that one I didn't pass either. Not yet. Working on it still. 6. Can you discuss the relationship between affirmative action, BIPOC, non-binary, progressive stacking order, and white centering?
I'm gonna plead the fifth right.
No.
I can finesse that.
You can bet that. Okay,
No.
I love it. I love it. All right, 7. Do you understand the intersectionality between BIPOC and LGBTQIA2S?
Plead the fifth.
Fifth.
Wait,
No.
I never knew that they went to the second square. I didn't know that LGBTQ went to the second square and had an extra
I want to go back to my
power.
first answer and I said yes about BIPOC. No. You know, I don't know.
LGBTQ to the second square.
You might figure it out.
Acronym out there?
I'm about to do it. Hey Siri,
Right,
what is BIPOC?
What does Siri say? I'm so curious.
see.
What does Siri say?
Let
Yeah,
me
because
see.
these questions make me nervous. You about to have me on camera. I'm like,
Hey Siri.
BIPOC.
That's why I gave my disclaimer. I was cutting class.
Siri, talk.
All right,
Siri,
you gotta ask her.
what is
Okay.
BIPOC? She said good morning.
Okay, so Siri needs to come to Race Talks too.
Right.
Okay. All right, and 8th and final question. Have you joined a social justice organization for Black people or advocated openly for Black people at work, socially, or with a government agency?
When I was in college.
Hell yeah.
And
When
I
I was in
have
college.
to.
Currently.
Don't mute DC.
Current and currently.
Ronald
Yes.
Bolton.
Past
I
the
was a part
present.
of that.
No.
So how many yeses did you have?
I had 2.
Yeah,
But I hope it's 2 because I just saw him say yeah with the BIPOC, so I was just like.
Whoa, I say I went back and retracted it.
See,
No.
so I didn't have
So
I had 1 yes.
awesome. So we would consider you a beginner
Right.
in discussing race, and that's okay.
Yeah, right.
And so again, that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier, is that a lot of times we as Black people assume we don't need to be in spaces where we're talking and practicing about how to get comfortable talking about race and racism because we experience it.
Right.
And so, but the reality is just because we experience a thing doesn't mean we necessarily know how to educate someone
That's a
about
fact.
it. And in my line of work, unfortunately, I see a lot of people out here trying to teach people how to do the thing that I'm like, yeah, you don't really know what you're doing, but that's okay.
Right.
I don't know if y'all see that in your industries.
Yes.
I'm a mind my business with
I mean,
it.
we in the industry of, like, we're in the pinnacle where our culture is being manipulated, right? And abused and used up. And racism is still a big part of the injustice and unbalance of the resources that come with it,
Right.
right? So every corporate company that exists use at least 30%, minimum 30%, and most of them at 70% stat facts of urban culture for their marketing.
Right.
Wow. Wow. So, any comments about this quiz you just took? So, BIPOC.
Yeah, break that
Siri
down.
don't even know what BIPOC is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. So the interesting thing about BIPOC
why I
is,
said
Hey, Charlie, chill out, man.
So here's the interesting thing about BIPOC. It is a way to classify people of color.
Mhm.
The problem is that people have been using BIPOC instead of saying Black.
I like that.
So we still have to teach white folks and other folks that who are not Black that they do not refer to us as BIPOC, that we are actually Black, and that Black is not a bad word.
Well, black is a color.
Not color.
Black is a
Black
color.
is a color.
It's an identity. It can be.
But it's put on us.
Yeah.
It's not who we are.
So
And
how do you identify?
as a warrior for God,
That was a good one.
because thank you, bro.
That?
You know, I'm gonna tell you why. Because
I like that.
so much of our culture and our language has been we are so under like this spell or this programming, right, of our language. And there's a lot of words that's used, and there's things that are applied to us that really don't represent us. It's what they created to
Right.
apply to us. And once you get knowledge of self, or you're aware like yourself, like your moms, I know y'all got great history, right? There's a lot of people who don't have that background or that knowledge. Growing up culturally from, Islam to 5%, the
Yeah.
Buddhism, you know what I mean? Even to understand like the Torah, like you got to understand like there's languages and barriers that's put on us to control us, and there's words that are created to imply who we are and what we are, you know what I mean? And once you understand and you read these books, right?
Yeah.
And you read and study the history, the true history, then you understand that all these things don't really apply to us. These words are kind of like spells they use to kind of keep us in this, the system of control. So black is a color, and I don't refer to myself as black consciously, but unconsciously sometimes, just because it's convenient, right?
Yeah.
But spiritually, you understand that we're so much more than that. And I think if we don't start addressing that part of principality, where even the words you use can be offensive, because that's not what we can't accept. Don't keep calling us black.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We don't have to accept that. You know what I mean?
I mean, I hear everything you're saying. So y'all see my mama, right? We don't look nothing alike. And so I would say, as a biracially Black woman, I identify as Black, and so that feels very important to me because of the way I show up in this room. Taylor, I'm really curious for you as a Black woman, when you come into spaces, do you share that view that RaRa is saying, that you don't need to identify as a Black woman, or how does Blackness
I
show
think
up
it
for
kind
you
of
in your
speaks
spaces?
for itself with my roots. Even I go to a lot of other rooms, and I grew up in a very, very, very predominantly Black but upper echelon neighborhood. I grew up in Bowie, Maryland, Prince George's County. So
Okay.
at the time, it was one of the richest counties in America when I grew up in it. So I grew up around so many people that looked like me, that was wealthy, that was brown, that was, Black, African American. And I could just remember in school, I had an African friend. And she was her name was Winifred. She was one of my favorite friends. And they used to call her African Booty Scratcher. And I just didn't understand, I didn't understand as a kid, what was the difference between maybe her and me, even though our skin was the same color. She wasn't much darker, but they identified her as African, complete African Booty Scratcher. So I realized as a young age, there was definitely a barrier in race, even between our culture, even Black, African, Jamaican, Caribbean, you know, and I think everybody's going to identify differently because people do say, you know, black is a color.
Yeah.
We should be brown. We should be African American. We should be this. But I think I would identify myself. If like ask me like how he said, like more of a child of God. Don't identify me with any color because I can blend in any room. I could go into the Caucasian, white rooms. I don't really feel comfortable always talking about race though because I never been really particularly like racially profiled other than one time in my life. I've always been treated fair across the board with Caucasians, with Spanish, I think Spanish don't really know how to talk to me as much, but I get that warm vibe through all races. So I just feel like being a powerful woman is more so what I would like to identify as versus white or black because I would date either race. I would, you know, I'm completely open to accepting everybody for who they are. So me identifying as a queen or empress, something like that. Just don't just be like that black girl, that black, because then if it's said from the wrong person, we're offended. Yeah. Just like the, excuse my language, nigger word. We want to call each other that. So really, I'm just like, I'm one of those people, like, everybody is really up and down with that whole thing. Black, you black girl, she ghetto, you know. So we are targeted with these words, like how you said sometimes. If we talking amongst each other, it's cool. When somebody like that black boy, that black, okay.
So what about black boy magic or black girl magic? How do y'all
when
feel
it's
about
coming,
that?
It's
Does that feel empowering, or
I think
does that feel just more
I think it's empowering
limiting?
for itself.
No. So I think like it's just based on how it's used because the way you gotta look at it is when they use black boy magic or black girl magic, it's the way that they brand it. So now because of how it's branded, because everything is still advertising and marketing.
Exactly.
So if you position it a certain way and you put it in front of us and it looks good or you gloss it up, now all of a sudden we embrace it as that's something that's positive because like when they're talking about like black boy or black girl or certain thing, depending on how it's used, then it could be offensive. You know what I'm saying? But everything and anything that you use is still all about tonality and just how it's like presented to us. So I just feel like right now it's positive. It's also because even like music is a major part of the way that things are influenced, from jingles to the people that you use to position or brand companies. So just there's nothing wrong with it based on how it's used because if we're gonna have black people brand a certain way, we needed something positive. Like just make it feel like we're gonna use it against us in some type of way.
Right.
How could we find the positive in the negative?
yeah, so I like the black.
I like the way you said that, and I want to hook on to that because I feel like sometimes I'm so disagreeable with, just spiritually, like knowing that I'm Ogun, so I'm like a warrior spirit. I'm a protector and a provider of my tribe. So I do use acronyms a lot. And just like Pac said, when you say nigga, right, it's a terms of endearment in our community. But the officials and the government, they want to make it be like, well, you're using it as a negative term.
Right.
Some of these preachers and pastors and leaders in the community want to say, but listen, what Pac did said, y'all, that's not even a real word. Yeah. So applying it to us, it don't have to mean what it means you when you apply it to me versus when I apply it to my brothers and sisters. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like nigga is never ignorant getting goals accomplished. And I've met a couple brothers that got different acronyms that's still positive. So when we be like, yo, my nigga, I say that, you know what I mean? And I don't feel it's never negative, but if you say someone from another culture or background say nigger, you know what I mean?
That harder.
It's hard. You know what I mean? And that's an intent. Like he said, that's what I was hooking into. The intentions of what you use these words for and what they were originally created for to be negative and a stigma to bring us down or oppress or suppress our personality or our energy as a people, right? We don't have to accept that. And I think my disagreeable energy is shared with a lot of my people because we don't have to accept nothing they put on us because we ain't of them. You know what I mean? And that's just how I feel. And I'm very disagreeable. So, and I'm intelligent enough to challenge anybody who want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Because I can back it up with spirituality. I can back it up with facts. I can back it up with experience.
Love it. Drizza, you want to?
I mean, me personally, I don't identify myself as black because, like I said, black is a color. You know, I consider myself, like she said, a child of the Most High. So that's that in a nutshell, really. You know, I'm a child of the Most High. I'm not a color. You know what I'm saying? Just like he's not white, she's not brown. Those are colors. That's not racist. So I'm a child of the Most High, and that's what I identify.
I'm gonna introduce Leland into the conversation.
Hey, how you doing?
So one thing I want to say about Portland now, we haven't identified where each of you is coming from, but here in Portland, just a little fun facts. So Portland was Oregon as a state was established as a whites only state. So it was so racist here, I'd like to say Jim Crow didn't even come live. So currently our statistical numbers, we have about 2% black folks statewide, and we have less than 6% black folks here in Portland Metro. So when we talk about identifying as black or being, you know, whatever shades of black, it does feel really important.
Yeah.
So just for I think content's sake, where are each of you coming from?
So I reside in Atlanta right now, but I'm from New York.
Okay.
Yeah, I reside in Atlanta right now. I'm from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I reside in Atlanta, but I'm from the DMV.
Okay.
From the DMV area as well, and I live in ATL.
Okay, so all very predominantly black cities that you come from and that you currently live in.
What's the GMB?
Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. At one point it was called Chocolate City,
So
right?
I was going to say,
And it's
in
not like that
19
anymore.
in 1979, in August of 1979, I moved from 7th and Taylor Northeast in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, uptown.
near Catholic University. I was often the only white guy. And to 14th and Southwest Taylor here in Portland. And I went out at night and I said, where is everybody? And how come they're all white? And I lived for about 30 years in inner Northeast Portland, which was an integrated area because I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't being uncomfortable being around all white people. And I thought at the time, my then wife and son, you know, we wanted to raise him where he would experience multicultural, we would have multicultural experience. Now, like Washington, D.C., I got to watch the gentrification happen there. When I lived in Washington, D.C., Anacostia was the ghetto, and now there's $1 million waterfront homes there.
Correct.
So it's
Stadium.
And that's what I even brought up when you say, have we fought anything? I was a part of that Don't Mute DC movement where they were trying to cancel go-go music during the gentrification. It was a super, super big thing. I mean, gentrification hit Washington, D.C. very hard. Like, it tore it up. I mean, it even went down to the music. It was so bad.
When I lived there, they were building the metro, and they sent it to the poor neighborhoods last. But I mean, I could catch it at Catholic University, and I was dating a woman whose dad was African American, whose mom was white, and she had more trouble walking around than I did. Nobody bothered me about this. So the sexism beats the racism, and we saw that, I think, when Obama beat Hillary to be the nominee, and then later when Trump beat Hillary. Or sort of, through the Electoral College. I came in late on the word conversation, but I wanted to share that when
we had a whole quiz.
I would like to know how he
until I became a plug, I did not know what a plug was.
Okay.
And I was mentioning to a client of mine yesterday, it's not a word among white people. They don't. It's not something that comes up in who's your plug for. Nobody talks like that. Nobody knows that.
How do you identify? We all identified as.
Oh, I don't know.
Black.
How
do
do I
you
identify?
identify as a white man? As Caucasian?
Well, sometimes I guess well, as a weed lawyer is how I show up. That's how I'm here for.
Right.
See,
that's how I think of myself.
Like that.
I guess when I'm filling something out and I have to put in my race and gender, I'm a white male. When I put in, sometimes when I'm talking, I heard you talking about spirituality, like Volodymyr Zelensky, I'm a non-practicing Jew. So there you go. So there you go. So it's yeah. So anyway, it's I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to meet y'all.
Great to meet you as well.
I've been to Atlanta. I went to Atlanta one time, and
Okay,
his friend took
Atlanta.
us out for dinner, and we had a flight of grits, and I just that was so special.
One thing I want to just kind of because I think we probably need to wrap up the conversation, but you said that you're a weed attorney, and for y'all, I'm a lawyer as well, non-practicing, and you know, I remember Albina, our family had a grocery store on Going and Williams, and one of the few black barbershops. So that's kind of what our family is known for in this community, and in addition to our civil rights and community work. And so one of the things that blew me away when I moved back to Portland in 2016 was all these cannabis homes. Because I remember Portland in the 80s. I grew up in Oakland, but I remember coming up to visit my grandparents and seeing all the weed houses and, you know, get your grams and your ounces on massive billboards, right? And I'm like, okay, I remember when fools was just hustling on the corner and getting picked up, and now we make up huge numbers disproportionately of our people who are in prison. Similarly, with it being 50 years of hip hop, we know that, you know, it gave birth in the Bronx. We won't go into the 5 elements of hip hop, but we do know that the history of hip hop is rooted in Black and Caribbean culture in New York, right?
Oh, no.
And so definitely how drug culture has fused into hip hop culture, and we see a lot of things being legalized. And so I'm just curious how this shows up in terms of, you know, you talked about the marketing budgets. We're being profited off of, but yet we're still not free. And so I'm just curious to know, how does that show up in your work? Are you able to change the tide on that? Do you see it changing?
I would like to definitely speak on that first, because just recently I ran into somebody from Memphis, Tennessee, Terry Octane, who actually is from a city where cannabis is not legal. But
Right.
me being from Washington, D.C., cannabis got legalized a few years ago. So I have a fruit, they have this, that now is decriminalized and everything. You can almost give me a t-shirt and I can get the cannabis from you. But I'm paying for the t-shirt, right? It's
Recreational and medical.
in medical. So there's a different element. So I took my friend from Memphis, connect him with my friend in DC who's opening up a dispensary. This is what you need to get, no matter what state you're in. You need to get your weed legalized. It needs to be O2'd, or it needs to go through some type of testing and get a label on it. And then we will do a deal partnership where you can sell your stuff into my dispensary and I'd be able to give you profit. So that was a deal that I was able to connect with someone who was not pretty much legal. But then here's the sad part about this. Recently we went to an event at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, where it is not. Okay, so we take my amazing person with us, and that person was penalized in Austin, Texas, arrested and things like that for, you know, so it's like, you know, it's one of those things where it's so crazy because you go one place, it's legal, you go another place, and then in the gas stations they're selling these lollipops, and then I don't know if you guys remember, they were even selling the fake cannabis at one time. And it was K2. K2. I mean, it's just like, give it to us straight. Give it to us raw. Make the rules the same all across the board. Let the people free who's been locked up 12, 13 years for these little bit of ounces that you've now allowed people to grow in their home.
And sell.
Yeah, like what is taking so long for it to be in every state?
Right.
When you realize that there were medical benefits. I remember when it wasn't legal, because I've been a consumer of marijuana for years, long time, way before I was able to, right? And I remember watching a video where they were talking about how it helped people with AIDS, it helped people with stutter, it helped people with all these different things, the sleep apnea, all autism. This was before it was legalized. So if we know that this has a benefit and helps people, stand on that. Stand on that. Stop arresting our culture, Black, Spanish, even the, you know, African American, white, everybody that's not able to sell it at a high level and purchase $1 million, think about it, $1 million cannabis license.
Yeah.
Cause then you strict on that.
Yeah.
You know, so come on now. I'm happy it's legal, and I'm happy that people see the benefit, but make it the same across the board and set those people free that's been locked up for years over marijuana. Come on. Let's set those people free.
You're right too.
Let's set those people free. RICO charges, you're dropping on people. Set those people
So
free.
there is an organization that's working on freeing people who are cannabis prisoners. Just basing on the name. I'll think of the name of it in just a sec. But,
You're in Portland specifically?
no,
or
nationally. Yeah, I'll think of it in a second. But fundamentally, the problem is federal prohibition.
Yeah.
And until we end federal prohibition, it's not going to be the same everywhere. And the political strategy was if we could flip enough states and we could change how people think about it. And we accomplished that. I mean, in my lifetime, I'm 67 years old. In my lifetime, it's gone from being, 20% support to over 60% of the people say they've consumed cannabis. So, but it's kind of, I don't know. I watched the Republican debate last night, and Nikki Haley was they were talking about a federal ban on abortion because they're Republicans and they talk about shit like that. And Nikki Haley was chewing out Mike Pence lied and said that 70% of the people support a federal ban. That's not true. Over 60% of the people support a woman's right to decide for herself what's going on. And among people under 30, as with weed, it's closer to 80%. But Haley said to him, but there's not 70% of the senators who think that. So it's been stalled in Congress, and it's been part of the stall in Congress since legalization has been the MSOs, which is an acronym for multi-state operators. And I'm going to talk about that more later today, I think.
I think I got more of a little, thank you for that too, Lee.
You're welcome.
I think I got more of a shrewd approach and a little more practical view, right? Because everybody has their own view, but we all know what it is. It's a system, it's part of the game, it's part of an agenda. There's reasons why certain states don't have it legalized yet, because they're trying to find out a way to, manipulate the highest profit margin on making it legal. You know what I mean? In Georgia, it's not legal in the state, but there's counties in Georgia that it's legal.
It's decriminalized.
Right.
Okay.
So, but in Georgia, we've been doing it regardless of their laws anyway.
Okay.
From the clubs to the street. So, my point I think that I want to make is, I'm personally very, very active in representing culture preservation and generational wealth. And I think that we need to look at my approach is to get it how we live, meaning that some of the traditional ways of getting it and making our statement and making our stand is a little different. I don't think it's as traditional as it was, because we're dealing with a different time, a different system of society with technology and all these new systems implemented. I think the young people, the youth, these young professionals, these young kids, they think different. Their life structure, we went from 3-parent homes with a grandparent next door or in the house, to, the grandmama is at the club, with the granddaughter. So, there's a lot of things that change. And I think I'm a big advocate on talking about, every time I get on the podium or a mic in my face, I talk about unifying and working us together like we all we got. So we got to really, even intellectually or educational wise, educate ourselves on what the system is. There's so many young people who don't know about the history and what some of the OGs and the brothers and sisters went through, black and white, that went through to preserve some of these situations so we don't have to go through it, right? But I think sometimes we got to be about that action, and I'm really heavy on showing you better than I can tell you. So my company agenda on all 4 of my companies is about culture preservation. That's my purpose. Culture preservation and generational wealth, and getting to how we live, showing these young people how to become entrepreneurs instead of employees. They don't have to go to college, they can get a trade. You know what I mean? And then you don't have to be, 21 years old, 23 years old in debt. They could be entrepreneurs with, Fortune 500 companies and e-commerce and, different programs and businesses, as youngsters. And we don't protect them, and we don't protect, our brothers and sisters, even if it's not physically, just spiritually enlightening. And then, the last thing I want to say to that is, everybody that come with us ain't gonna go with us. So we all ain't gonna make the cut. There's some people out here who just wicked. There's some people who don't care. Some people who just have no interest in that part of it. But those ain't our people, but we gotta coexist with the devil. You know what I mean? As long as we have an agenda in ourselves to kind of empower our people and come together, because it's a fact that it has to be unified. And it's a fact that the traditional ways ain't working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I guess just evolving and elevating to another level of communicating. So I work with a lot of young people, even the crew here. I'm like the OG on the squad. Well, one of the OGs, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like sometimes we got to take the obligation and the commitment to say we do got to give them some knowledge. We do got to be patient with them. We do have to, let this young girl know that she ain't being, pride on, just, a predator. You know what I mean? Like, we got to protect our young people. We do got to get some of these young brothers and let them know there's an obligation for them to stand up and do better. You know what I mean? And I think the more I do it, the more I talk about it, that you can't take that away from me. At least I'm doing my part of God's work, right? And I think that kind of spins off. And that's what I inspire when I introduce. Diversity is very important. You know what I mean? I had a chicken company in Finland. It's the whitest country in Europe. And I had a fried chicken company for 9 years. You know what I mean?
I could see that.
Yeah. And everybody asked me, it was like, well, why'd you go to Finland? I said, well, they ain't have fried chicken. Right? You know what I mean? So if the business and the mindset, even the words we use and the things we think about, everybody's intellectual properties and their thoughts and what they want to do can become a business.
Yeah.
And if we don't change our community financially, we just spinning the wheel. And, I'm just tired of that.
Any
It's a Last Prisoner Project is the group that's trying.
Last Preserve
Project is a group that's trying to free the cannabis prisoners, who are mostly federal prisoners. In Oregon, for example, there's not really very many people in prison for weed anymore.
But we can get in the industry, and Taylor talked about that in terms of, the licensing.
Well, in Oregon,
is a problem.
in Oregon, licensing is within the last 2 years if there's a controlled substances conviction.
No, what I'm saying is if you want to get like a handler's license and you want
Again,
to work in the.
If it's more than 2 years ago, your conviction, then you can apply in Oregon. We wrote that in.
Wow.
And so I helped write the medical law and adult use law, and we wrote that in. So I was going to say something about what you were saying. I can't think of it.
I think in terms of some of the barriers that we look at, I had a friend who had the Oregon Handlers Fund, so she was trying to get the cost of the license paid for folks. And so one of the things, we actually had a panel on Race Talks where we had women in cannabis. And so a couple of things you spoke to, Taylor, I didn't know. First of all the black women in cannabis, working at high levels know each other. So when you talk about the medicinal elements, we have someone here named Dr. Rachel Knox, and I think she'll be here today.
Oh, good.
And so she speaks to the medical use of cannabis. And so what we didn't know, what she shared at Race Talks, is that cannabis actually used to be used and prescribed widely. But then they started realizing that they could make more money off using other manufactured drugs. And so they took it off. And so, because it was actually healing people, the medical industry is unfortunately.
Can we have a blunt to the floor?
Right. But it's interesting to know that, when you come out of prison, you got to get a license. You have to have a residence. You have to, all these things cost
you
money.
can't be a felon.
You
like
have
you
a
said.
real license. That's $90. Where are you getting your money from? And so for us, we're working, we have money, we have income. But for people who have no job and they have no resources, where are you going to get that thing that's going to help you get started? And so there are some really amazing organizations here that do that work. Unfortunately, they tend to be underfunded. And so I would definitely say check out what you have locally in your local areas to see if there's anyone doing that kind of work. Because
Oregon was one of the first states to legalize in 2016, and so we didn't think, and it was white people, so we didn't think of social equity issue. So there is and has been for the last couple of sessions an effort for social equity. And I was going to say in response about what you were saying, that the way I describe that phenomenon is there's a lot of sharks swimming in the water. If you get involved in cannabis businesses, you can't trust everybody. Right.
We've had a lot of holdups. We've recently had someone who was killed during a holdup. I think one or two.
I'm not talking
people.
about like I'm talking about just in business, people getting ripped off, people who are untrustworthy.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. You can't trust everybody.
See, the product don't matter.
You would
The
think
hustle is the hustle. The grind is the grind. The game is game.
Whether corporate or street.
Yeah, corporate. It ain't really you wearing a suit or you wearing a hoodie. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing. That the suits is a little more dangerous, real talk, from my lifestyle and being in the game and understanding the high end of corporate, that they can do it with a smile and a pen, and you can't do nothing about it. And if you do, then you're gonna be in jail. So you gotta just know how to apply yourself and win with God's gift and your intelligence, and always just upgrade. Sometimes we just gotta get better every day.
Yeah.
We don't gotta do what nobody else do or how they do it. Let's just keep evolving, right? And that's just I'm just heavy on that part.
I'm looking over here because I'm like, is Miss Oregon gonna walk in and tell us it's time for us to come downstairs? So I know it's almost 12:30, and I know you all probably want to be able to stretch your legs and get some food before we smoke.
Definitely.
Before you
After
get
that
into
amazing
the
conversation.
but we're gonna rejoin downstairs for the panel discussion. But I just really want to say thank you so much.
And I salute you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For giving us this knowledge.
Now, what I didn't give you was the acronym meaning. So BIPOC,
it's
we
also-
said Black, Indigenous, People of Color. We use LGBTQIA.
So the squared?
Squared, yes.
Okay.
So Two-Spirit. So people who are non-binary don't identify as male or female, even though you may have a gender assigned to you at birth, right? So Two-Spirit in our ancient cultures, I say ancient liberally, but even in African cultures and indigenous cultures, Two-Spirit is somebody who holds masculine and feminine energies equitably. And they were actually revered in community. So you talk about Ogun warrior, you know, we have Oshun, we have Yemaya, all the Orishas. And so we have an Orisha, the name escapes me, who is two-spirited. So we don't talk about that. And that's something that I think, especially within our community as Black folks, we need to get more comfortable talking about who we are and our sexual and gender orientations, because we got a lot of violence going on there. And I think we said progressive stacking order. So at Race Talks, we use the BIPOC to identify who speaks first. So Black folks first, Indigenous, POC, then white folks. And that's really because when we're in the corporate and academic spaces, white men speak first, then white women. Typically you and I would speak last. I'd speak before you because I'm lighter skinned, and that's how colorism works.
Girl, you
And so, but that's the reality of how we know colorism works, right? And so we invert the marginalized voices. So people who are traditionally marginalized, we bring and center those voices. Was there anything else that I left out? I think I covered it, but thank you for playing my Race Talks IQ quiz, and
Shout out to Race Talks.
Get our big shout out to Race Talk.